I never thought I'd be sharing this story. I used to think my life was just ordinary. Turns out I was wrong. I'm Ethan, and at 28, I've learned the hard way that sometimes family can hurt more than help. My mom passed away right after I was born. I know, it's a pretty grim start to a life story, but it sets the stage for what was to come. My dad? Well, he never really got over her death. It was like her passing left a hole so deep that nothing, especially not me, could fill it. So, I grew up with a dad who was there physically, but emotionally, he was a ghost. There were photos of her all around the house. Every room, every corner was a shrine to the woman I would never meet. Her clothes hung untouched in the closet, her books gathering dust on the shelves. I used to sneak into their bedroom just to touch her things, hoping it would somehow bring me closer to the mother. I'd never know, but it didn't. Now, about my dad. He didn't hate me, not exactly, but he never really loved me either. Sure, he made sure I was fed, clothed, and dropped off at school on time, but there was nothing more than that. No warm hugs, no I love you, nothing. I was just there. It wasn't just a lack of affection that stung, though. It was the constant comparisons to my cousin, Aiden. My uncle Aiden's dad died in a car crash when Aiden was 7. After that, my dad basically took him in. At first, I thought it would be fun to have another kid around. Maybe my dad would start opening up, right? But nope. Instead, I realized that Aiden was the son my dad had always wanted. Aiden was everything I wasn't. Charming, athletic, always the center of attention. While I spent my free time reading and staying out of the way, Aiden was out there playing sports, cracking jokes, and basically being the life of every party. The worst part? My dad would always make it clear that Aiden was the better kid. "Why can't you be more like Aiden?" he'd ask. That question followed me everywhere. I tried. Believe me, I tried. I worked hard at everything I did. I studied for hours, joined every sports team my dad thought I might like, and kept my grades up. I thought that maybe, just maybe, if I was good enough at something, he'd notice. But no. Aiden could do no wrong. He got compliments for the smallest things. Meanwhile, when I won the school science fair at 12 for creating a moving solar system model, my dad barely looked up from his conversation with Aiden about the latest football game. The slap in the face? He didn't even notice my achievement. He didn't care. Things didn't get better as we got older. I did well in school. Aiden? Not so much. But my dad? He didn't care about my grades. I was the nerd. And Aiden? Well, Aiden was the cool one. At parent-teacher conferences, my English teacher praised my essay, saying it was one of the best she'd seen. But when I told my dad, his response was, "That's nice, but does this help you get a scholarship for sports?" I wanted to scream. It was like I didn't even exist in his eyes unless I was comparing myself to Aiden. My dad couldn't see beyond his grief, and I just ended up as the second choice. Then came college. I had always known it would be tough. Money was tight, but I was determined. I was enrolled in a decent university, excited to start building my future. I figured my dad would help at least a little. Spoiler, he didn't. The worst moment came when I overheard him on the phone with Aiden. He was telling him he'd pay for all of Aiden's college tuition. I remember the conversation like it was yesterday. My heart sank. I asked my dad if he could help me too, just a little. He looked at me like I was insane. "Aiden needs it more than you do," he said. And that's how my college dreams vanished. I didn't give up, though. I worked my butt off. I had 3 part-time jobs just to cover the basics. I did everything from waiting tables to working at a gas station overnight. I applied for every scholarship I could find, but it wasn't enough. The pressure was unbearable. After my first semester, I had no choice but to drop out. I was drowning in debt, and my grades were slipping from the exhaustion. Meanwhile, Aiden was living it up at a prestigious school. Every time he posted on social media about his new dorm room, spring break trips, or fancy gadgets my dad bought him, it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. That was the last straw. I packed my stuff, left home, and cut off all contact with both my dad and Aiden. It hurt like hell, but I knew I had to leave that toxic environment. The next few years weren't easy. I worked a series of odd jobs, struggling to make ends meet, but slowly I started building a life on my own terms. I eventually found a job at a local bookstore. Nothing glamorous, but enough to get by. And though I had to drop out of college, I didn't give up on learning. I enrolled in night classes at a community college, working toward the degree I had always dreamed of. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I had a few good friends who stuck by me, people who accepted me for who I was, not for who I could be if I was more like Aiden. We had game nights, camping trips, and laughed together. They became the family I never had. But just when I thought I had put all that drama behind me, life threw me a curveball. Yesterday, I got a call, a number I didn't recognize, and when I picked up, I was floored to hear my dad's voice on the other end. It had been 3 years since we last spoke, and now he was asking me for help. So there I was, standing in my kitchen, still in shock, after hearing my dad's voice on the phone. 3 years. 3 years of silence, and now he was calling me. Why now? What could possibly make him reach out after everything that had happened? I stood there for a few moments, holding the phone in my hand, unsure of what to say. Honestly, I didn't even know how to feel. Part of me felt angry, hurt even, that after all the years of him choosing Aiden over me, he was now asking for my help. My mind raced with 100 different emotions, but the biggest one, confusion. I finally took a deep breath and answered, trying to mask my shock. "What's going on, Dad? Why are you calling me?" There was a long pause on the other end, and when he finally spoke, his voice was softer, shakier, almost vulnerable. "Ethan, I need your help," he said, his voice cracking a bit. "I've gotten myself into a bit of trouble. I'll be honest, I almost dropped the phone right then and there. My dad, the man who had never once supported me emotionally, was now asking for my help. It was the ultimate twist of fate, and it felt wrong. What kind of trouble?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. His next words hit me like a punch in the gut. "I've made some bad financial decisions, Ethan. I've been trying to help Aiden with his business. It didn't work out. Now I'm in debt, and I don't know where to turn. I need you to lend me some money, son." I stood there, speechless for a few seconds, just trying to process what I had just heard. My dad, the man who had told me so many times that Aiden was the one with potential, the golden child, was now in a mess of his own making. And what did he want from me? Money. Money that I had barely scraped together in the last few years. Money I had worked 3 jobs for. And now he was asking me to give it to him? "Wait a minute," I said, my heart pounding. "What about Aiden? Why don't you ask him for help? Isn't he the one you've always believed in?" Another long silence followed before my dad's voice came back, barely a whisper. Aiden's got his own problems now. His business didn't take off like he thought it would. He can't help. There it was. The twist. Aiden, the guy who was always the perfect one, the guy who could do no wrong, was now struggling too. I could hear the desperation in my dad's voice, but that didn't change the fact that I had been the one left behind. I had been the one who had been sacrificed for Aiden's dream, and now my dad was turning to me after everything. I tried to keep my emotions in check. The anger, the betrayal, all of it was bubbling up inside me, but I didn't let it spill out. Not yet. I needed to think. "You're really asking me for money? After everything?" I finally said, unable to hide the frustration in my voice. "After you chose Aiden over me? After I had to work my ass off just to survive? Now you want me to bail you out?" My dad's voice dropped even lower, like he was defeated. "I know I wasn't a great father to you, Ethan. I made a lot of mistakes. I didn't know how to cope with everything. Losing your mom, then losing my connection with you. But I want to make things right." I didn't know whether to believe him or not. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to tell him how much he had hurt me over the years, how many times I had wished he'd been there for me when I needed him the most. But the other part of me, the part that still wanted a father in my life, was softening. It was tempting to believe him, tempting to hope that, somehow, this was the beginning of a change. But then the reality hit me. No, I couldn't fall for this again. "Dad, I'm sorry, but I can't help you," I said, my voice firm now. "I've been on my own for years, and I've had to figure things out myself. You made your choices. Aiden, the business, all of it. It's not my responsibility to fix things for you. I'm not the backup plan anymore." The silence that followed was heavy, like the air had thickened between us. I could feel his disappointment radiating through the phone, but I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I was putting my needs first. I wasn't going to let my dad's mistakes dictate my life anymore. He tried to plead with me, but I wasn't budging. I knew this was a defining moment for me. I could either let myself fall back into the same old pattern of trying to earn his approval, or I could stand my ground and protect myself from the emotional mess he had created. I chose the latter. "I'm sorry, Dad," I repeated, trying to sound as calm as possible, even though my heart was racing. "But I'm not the person you can lean on anymore. I'm done with that." And with that, I hung up. I didn't need to hear anything else. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had taken control. And it felt empowering. The next few days were a blur. I went through my routine work, school, hanging out with friends, trying to ignore the gnawing feeling in my chest. But every time I saw a post from Aiden or a message from my dad asking if I'd reconsider, I felt the weight of it all, but I wasn't going back. I couldn't. It wasn't until a week later that I got the second bombshell. Aiden, of course, posted something on social media, bragging about his new beginnings and how he was finally making it. He didn't mention the business failure, the debts, or the fact that my dad was drowning in them. Nope. Just a shiny, polished image of his life that everyone was supposed to envy. That was it. I knew that Aiden had no intention of helping my dad, and it wasn't like I could ever expect him to. He'd always been the golden boy, after all. And I was the one who had been left out, left to fend for myself. But you know what? I was done playing second fiddle. I had already started my own journey, away from the shadows of my dad and Aiden. I wasn't going to let their mistakes define me anymore. Sure, it hurt. Sure, it sucked. But I was stronger now, and I was building a life that was mine, not some reflection of someone else's expectations. It's been a few weeks since the call with my dad, and I'd be lying if I said things were easy. Honestly, I've never been great at handling conflict. But this felt different. For the first time in my life, I actually stood up for myself, and for the first time, I wasn't seeking anyone's approval. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were moments, particularly in the days after I ended that call, when I questioned if I'd done the right thing. I kept replaying that conversation in my head. Was I too harsh? Was I wrong to shut him down, especially when he sounded so defeated? I knew that if I gave him even an inch, he'd try to pull me back into the same toxic cycle. But the guilt, man, it hit me hard. I was still his son, right? That's what kept running through my mind. And part of me, no matter how much I hated to admit it, still craved his approval. I mean, who wouldn't want to feel seen by their parents? But I couldn't go back to being the one who always ended up second. I wasn't going to keep chasing a ghost. Then came the moment I thought I'd finally shaken off. A few days ago, I got another call. This time, it was Aiden. My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity got the best of me, and I picked up. "Aiden?" I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Ethan, man, we need to talk," he said, his voice sounding almost urgent. I raised an eyebrow. "Aiden? Urgent?" That was a new one. What about? "I know things have been weird between us, with Dad and everything. Look, I'm sorry, okay? I don't know what happened, but, well, you've got to understand, it's not just me. It's not just Dad either." I wasn't sure how to respond to that. Aiden had always been the guy who glided through life with ease. It was hard to take him seriously when he suddenly sounded so vulnerable. But I listened. "I didn't know how bad things had gotten with him, with Dad," Aiden continued. "Honestly, I thought he was doing okay. He'd always made it seem like he had everything together. I had no idea he was sinking. And now that I know, I don't know what to do, man." There it was. The confession I hadn't expected. Aiden, the golden child, wasn't as untouchable as he always seemed. The perfect image of him had cracked, and now he was reaching out to me for help. "You didn't know?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice level. "Really? You didn't know? I find that hard to believe, Aiden. After everything, all the years of Dad talking about how you were the one he was proud of, the one he wanted to succeed. You never thought to check on him?" There was silence on the other end. "I was wrapped up in my own stuff, Ethan. I've made a lot of mistakes too. But that doesn't mean I'm not trying to make things right. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't know what to make of that." Aiden, the kid who had always had the world handed to him, was now apologizing. But did that apology mean anything? I didn't know. Maybe it was genuine, maybe not. Either way, it didn't change the past. Listen, I said, cutting through the tension. I don't know what you want from me, Aiden, but I'm not going to go back to being the second choice. That's not who I am anymore. And I'm done trying to fix things for people who never cared enough to fix things for me. He sighed deeply, like the weight of my words hit him. I get it. I do. I've been a jerk, and I'm sorry for that. I don't want things to be this way between us anymore. I want us to be brothers again, Ethan. Real brothers. I wasn't sure what that meant. Aiden and I had always been family, sure, but we were never brothers in the way he was suggesting. We hadn't been close in years, not since childhood, and even then, it was always a weird kind of connection, him being the golden child, me being the afterthought. I don't know if we can ever go back to the way things were, I said, my voice softening just a little. But I don't want to keep holding on to all this anger either. We've both got our own lives now. He seemed relieved by that. Yeah, I get that. I don't want to drag you into Dad's mess. But if you ever want to talk or anything, I'm here. For the first time in my life, I felt a strange sense of closure. Aiden wasn't the problem anymore. I wasn't even sure he had ever been the problem. The real issue had always been me. I had spent so many years trying to fit into a role that was never mine to begin with, trying to be the son my dad wanted, trying to compete with Aiden for approval. It wasn't until I stopped fighting for their love that I realized how much weight I had been carrying. The conversation ended without any grand resolution, but for once, it felt like we were both on the same page. Aiden wasn't the perfect son anymore, and me, I wasn't the resentful kid anymore. I had finally taken charge of my own life without needing their validation. That felt powerful. A few days later, I had a long chat with my closest friend, Sarah. We'd been through a lot together, her own battles with her family, and mine with mine. As we sat on the porch, sipping beers and chatting about life, I realized how much I had grown. I had been so focused on seeking validation from my dad, Aiden, everyone around me, that I hadn't stopped to appreciate what I had built for myself. I've been trying so hard to fix everything that's broken, I told her, but maybe it's time I just let it all go. You're finally realizing it, huh? Sarah said with a smile. You can't fix the past, Ethan. You can only move forward, and it sounds like you're doing that. I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. She was right. It was time to stop trying to fix things that were never meant to be fixed. Aiden had his own journey to figure out. My dad? Well, he was still stuck in his cycle of mistakes, but that wasn't my problem anymore. I had to focus on my own path now. No more living in the shadow of the past. And as much as I hated to admit it, I finally felt like I was moving on. There was no magical reconciliation, no perfect family reunion, but there was peace. Peace that I had fought for. A couple of months passed after that phone call with Aiden. Honestly, life felt like it was finally starting to settle into something manageable. No more phone calls from Dad asking for money. No more endless cycles of disappointment. I was finally starting to build something for myself, and it felt like I could finally breathe without the weight of my family's issues constantly dragging me down. But, as always, life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. One Saturday afternoon, I was sitting at my favorite coffee shop, typing away at my laptop, working on an assignment for my night classes. It wasn't glamorous, but it was progress. My bookstore job was paying the bills, my grades were good, and I was actually starting to feel like I was heading somewhere. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't feeling stuck. That's when I saw it. A notification popped up on my phone. It was from Facebook, something I had almost completely abandoned. I rarely checked it anymore, but something made me tap the notification. And I wish I hadn't. It was a post from my dad. A photo of him standing next to Aiden, both grinning like they were the happiest people alive. Aiden had his arms slung around my dad's shoulders, and they were standing outside some fancy restaurant, the kind that's too expensive for my taste, but apparently was now their go-to. The caption? Aiden and I celebrating a new chapter. So proud of the man he's become. Couldn't be happier. My stomach sank. My jaw clenched. I didn't know what hurt more, the fact that they were living their perfect little life, or the fact that my dad felt the need to rub it in my face like this. I stared at the photo for what felt like hours, even though it had probably been mere seconds. The anger flared up in my chest again, and I could feel it. That same familiar ache. I had worked so hard to break free from all this. But seeing that photo, seeing how happy they were, and knowing how little I was part of their life hit me like a ton of bricks. I shut off my phone, shaking my head. No, I wasn't going to do this. I wasn't going to let them drag me back into their mess. I had fought too hard to get where I was. I had learned to rely on myself, and I couldn't let them tear that down now. But it wasn't just about that. I was angry, yes, but there was something deeper, something more unsettling. I realized something that shook me to my core. I didn't need them anymore. That was the truth. I had spent my entire life thinking I needed my dad's approval, my cousin's acceptance. I thought they were the ones who would validate me. But as I sat there in that coffee shop, I realized that I was my own validation. And that was something nobody could take away from me. It wasn't an easy realization. It was actually a little terrifying. All my life, I had been searching for someone else to tell me that I was enough. But now, for the first time, I was starting to believe it on my own. I didn't need anyone's approval to know that I was worthy. I had worked hard, built my life from the ground up, and it was time to stop looking to my past for validation. It was time to look forward. But that didn't mean the anger went away. In fact, it burned even brighter now. I thought back to everything every time my dad chose Aiden. Every time he made me feel like I didn't matter. It hurt. It hurt a lot. But it also gave me strength, because I knew, deep down, that I was never going to let anyone make me feel that small again. Not ever. That night, as I sat in my tiny apartment, the quiet hum of the city outside, I found myself writing. It wasn't for school or work, it was for me. I poured everything out. My frustration, my pain, my sense of betrayal. It was raw. It was cathartic. And for the first time in years, it felt like I was in control of my emotions. I wasn't letting them control me anymore. The next day, I got a message from Aiden. It was short, just a "Hey, can we talk?" And I almost didn't respond. But something in me told me that I wasn't done with this chapter just yet. We met up at a cafe, a neutral place. When I walked in, I saw Aiden sitting at a table, looking a bit awkward, like he wasn't sure how to approach me. For a second, I wondered if it was worth it. Maybe I was finally ready to cut all ties with my family. But something told me I needed closure. Even if I didn't get the answers I wanted, I needed to hear him out. "Hey, Ethan," Aiden said, his voice uncharacteristically soft. He wasn't the cocky, confident cousin I remembered. "I've been thinking about what you said, and I'm sorry. I know I've messed up. A lot. But I don't want us to be like this. I don't want you to feel like you're second to me anymore." I almost didn't believe it. It was like he was reading from some script, trying to apologize for all the years of rivalry, all the years of being Dad's golden child while I was the afterthought. But something in his eyes, something real, made me pause. "You can't just apologize and expect everything to be okay," I said, feeling the weight of every word. "You can't undo all the years of being Dad's favorite, all the times I was overlooked. You can't fix that with a few words." He nodded, guilt washing over his face. "I know, but I'm trying. And I know it's not going to be easy, but I don't want us to keep being like this." "I'm sorry, Ethan. I really am." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. The anger that had burned so brightly inside me was starting to fade, but it wasn't gone completely. I wasn't sure if it would ever fully disappear. But I did know one thing: Aiden's apology was a start. It wasn't everything, but it was something. And for the first time, I could see that maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward for both of us. "I don't know what this means yet," I said, finally breaking the silence. "But I'm willing to try, Aiden. I'm willing to work on this. But it's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of time." He smiled, a genuine smile, and for the first time, I saw the Aiden I had always wanted to see. The one who wasn't just about looking good for everyone else, the one who actually cared. "I get it," he said, his voice steady. "And I'm not going anywhere." The conversation with Aiden, though unexpected, marked a turning point. I wasn't sure if it was the start of a new chapter or just a brief pause in a never-ending cycle, but it did something for me, something I didn't even realize I needed until that moment. It gave me a sense of closure. And closure, as it turned out, was what I had been desperately searching for all along. In the days that followed, I spent more time reflecting than I ever had before. There was still a part of me that felt resentful. The past wasn't something I could just shake off, and I realized that forgiving didn't mean forgetting. I didn't have to go back to being the person I once was, always looking for validation, constantly measuring myself against others, especially Aiden. I had spent my whole life living for someone else's approval. And, as it turned out, that was the very thing holding me back from fully living my own life. But at the same time, I knew something had changed inside me. I'd come to understand that true growth wasn't about fixing everything that was broken in the past. It was about how you moved forward, how you learned from the mistakes and struggles, and how you didn't let them define you. With Aiden, things were still up in the air. I wasn't ready to dive back into a brotherly relationship with him, but I was no longer holding on to that bitter anger that had kept us apart for so long. I was open to seeing where things could go, but it wasn't going to be an overnight thing. I wasn't going to be a kid anymore, trying to get the approval I was never given. I was going to be someone who was okay with himself, someone who didn't need anyone else to tell him his worth. Life at the bookstore continued, and honestly, it had become a place of peace for me. I wasn't where I thought I would be at 28, but I had built something solid. I had a steady job that paid the bills, and I was going back to school. Sure, I wasn't running some fancy business, but I had something that mattered more: independence. I had made friends who cared about me for who I was, not because I could make them proud or meet some invisible standard. Sarah, of course, was at the center of that group. She had been my rock during all the hard times, and she was still there, even as I started making peace with my family. There was something about her unwavering support that made me feel like I could take on the world. One night, while we were sitting on the couch in my apartment, eating takeout and watching a random movie, Sarah looked at me and said, "You've come a long way, you know that?" I paused the movie, glancing at her with a raised eyebrow. "What do you mean?" She smiled softly, her eyes warm. "You used to be so wrapped up in all the drama with your family. You're different now. You're not just surviving anymore, Ethan. You're living." Her words hit me in a way I hadn't expected. I hadn't even realized it myself, but she was right. For the first time in years, I wasn't letting the past control me. I wasn't letting my dad's neglect, Aiden's perfection, or all the family drama dictate how I lived. I was building my own life, one step at a time, and that was something worth celebrating. It wasn't all smooth sailing, of course. There were still days when the weight of everything that had happened with my dad and Aiden would crash down on me, reminding me of how much I had lost. The truth was, I still missed the idea of having a family, but the reality was that I had outgrown the need for that kind of family. What I had now, my friends, my job, my own path, was real, and it was enough. I started looking at the world a little differently after that. I stopped focusing so much on what I didn't have and started appreciating what I did. That's when I realized something else. Life wasn't about chasing after approval. It was about finding peace in what you already had, in what you could create for yourself, and in knowing that you were enough just as you were. Then, about a month later, I got a message from Dad. My first instinct was to ignore it, but something in me decided to open it up. It wasn't much, just a short message asking if we could meet. There was no pleading, no grand apology, just a simple request. At first, I didn't know how to react. I hadn't heard from him in months, and I honestly hadn't expected to. But part of me felt like this was the moment I needed to face. I had put it off for so long, burying the anger and disappointment. Maybe it was time to finally talk to him. Not because I needed him to change or to apologize, but because I had changed. And I could walk into that conversation knowing that I was okay, regardless of what he said or didn't say. I agreed to meet him at a park, a neutral spot where neither of us had any real history. The day of the meeting, my stomach was in knots. I kept telling myself I wasn't going to expect anything from him. But still, I couldn't help but wonder, what was this about? When I got there, Dad was sitting on a bench, looking older than I remembered. The years had taken their toll on him, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. But then I remembered all the years I'd spent feeling invisible, all the times I'd needed him and never got anything in return. I wasn't the kid anymore. I was an adult, and I had every right to set my boundaries. "Hey," I said as I sat down beside him. I kept my voice steady, but it wasn't easy. "What's going on?" He looked at me, his eyes tired but somehow hopeful. I wanted to talk, Ethan. I know I've messed up. I've been thinking a lot about how things went between us, and I can't tell you how sorry I am for not being there for you. I've always been so focused on Aiden, but I know that's not fair. You deserved more from me." I nodded, taking in his words. It wasn't enough, but it was something, and I wasn't going to expect more than that. "Dad," I said, my voice calm but firm, "I'm not looking for you to fix everything. I don't need your approval anymore. I've spent enough of my life trying to earn it. What I need now is just to be seen for who I am, not for who you wanted me to be." He was quiet for a moment, letting my words sink in. Then he finally spoke, his voice small, almost defeated. "I understand. I really do. And I'm sorry for everything." I didn't feel the need to say anything more. We sat there for a few more minutes, the silence between us not as heavy as it used to be. I knew that things weren't perfect. They might never be. But this was progress, and that was enough for me. The conversation with my dad in the park was the final chapter I needed to close, not just with him, but with my past. The weight of all those years, of longing for approval, of battling my insecurities, finally felt like it had been lifted. For the first time, I felt free. The following weeks felt different, almost surreal. I wasn't waking up to texts from my dad asking for help, or seeing posts about Aiden's perfect life, or wondering if I was enough. I was just living. Finally, I could focus on my work, my classes, and my friends without constantly looking over my shoulder at the family drama that had haunted me for years. But with that newfound peace came a few realizations too, realizations that were both comforting and unsettling. I had been so wrapped up in the idea of having a family that I never fully appreciated the family I had built for myself. My friend Sarah, in particular, had become the support system I never knew I needed. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I'd been giving up by staying tethered to people who never fully appreciated me. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. I was thriving. I wasn't a kid hoping for a chance to prove myself anymore. I was an adult, carving out my own path, making my own decisions, and living life on my terms. As much as I'd loved the idea of having a family that would always be there, the reality was that I didn't need them in the same way anymore. The people who truly mattered were the ones who had seen me for who I was, the ones who didn't expect me to be perfect. Sarah, for one. She was there for me when I was at my lowest, and she never asked anything in return. I realized then that, in many ways, she had become the sister I never had. And it wasn't just Sarah. There were others too, some of the regulars at the bookstore who had become my second family. The people who shared their stories, their struggles, and their victories with me. They didn't care about my past, about the person I used to be, or about the family who had failed me. They cared about who I was in the here and now, and that was enough for me. The days passed, and life carried on. There were still struggles. Of course, nothing worth having is ever truly easy. But I was different now. I had perspective, and more than that, I had strength. One night, as I sat in my small, cozy apartment, working on my latest assignment, my phone buzzed. I was hesitant to check it, but something told me it might be important. I picked it up, and sure enough, it was a message from Aiden. It read, "Hey, I know things have been complicated, and I know I can't fix everything, but I've been thinking a lot. I'm still here if you need me. No pressure, just wanted to let you know." I stared at the message for a long time, unsure of what to think. My first instinct was to ignore it, to brush it off like I had with so many of his messages before. But then, for some reason, I found myself typing a response. "I appreciate it, Aiden. I do. But I've been thinking a lot too, and I think we're in different places now. I'm not looking to go back to how things were, but I'm okay. I really am." I hit send and immediately felt a sense of relief. I didn't need him in the way I once did. I didn't need his approval, his validation, or his presence to feel complete. I was complete on my own. The truth is, Aiden's apology, while meaningful, didn't change the fact that I had already moved on. I had built my own life, and I was proud of it. What we had, what we could have had, was lost in the past, and that was okay. Life was moving forward. My nights were filled with studying, my weekends with books and friends. I had my routine, my goals, and for the first time in a long time, I had peace. But then came the unexpected. About 2 months after I'd sent that message to Aiden, I received another phone call, this time from my dad. I hadn't heard from him since our meeting in the park. To say I was surprised would be an understatement. I hesitated before answering, but curiosity won out. "Ethan," my dad's voice came through, sounding older, wearier than I remembered. "I know it's been a while, and I don't expect anything from you, but I wanted to tell you something. Something that's been on my mind." I stayed silent, waiting for him to continue. Part of me wanted to hang up, to close the door on this chapter for good. But another part of me was still curious. Maybe this was his way of closing the loop. "I know I've let you down," he continued, "and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But I want you to know that I'm proud of you. I've watched you from a distance, and I've seen how far you've come. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway. Not because I want something from you, but because I want you to know that I see you, and I'm sorry." His words hit me in ways I wasn't prepared for. It wasn't the grand apology I had once hoped for, but it was something. It was enough, I realized, to finally put the past to rest. He wasn't asking for my help, my approval, or my forgiveness. He was simply acknowledging what had happened. And in that moment, I felt a weight lift off me that I hadn't even realized I was still carrying. I took a deep breath before replying, my voice steady. "It's all right, Dad. I'm doing okay. I found my way, and I'm okay with where I am now, and that's because of everything I've been through. I appreciate your words, but I don't need anything from you anymore. I've got it. I've got me." There was a pause on the other end, and then he spoke, his voice softer this time. "I'm proud of you, Ethan, truly." And with that, we ended the conversation. That phone call, that simple, understated apology, was the last piece of the puzzle. I had let go of the anger, the resentment, and the constant need for validation. I was free. The next day, I walked into work with a renewed sense of purpose. I wasn't weighed down by the past anymore. I wasn't carrying anyone else's baggage. I had learned to embrace my own journey, to trust myself, and to know that I was enough without needing anyone else's permission. Life wasn't perfect. It never would be. But I had come so far. And that was enough. Story 2. My sister falsely accused me of stealing her engagement ring, which led to my expulsion from my family. They found it in the garbage disposal 3 years later. I never thought I would be narrating this tale, however, let's get started. I'm Elliot, and I'm 26. And 3 years ago, my 29-year-old elder sister Gemma made a bogus accusation that completely upended my life. Along with my sister Gemma and my parents, John, 55, and Lisa, 53, I grew up in a little Ohio town. When my parents first got married, they bought a little 2-story home where we resided. It was home, but it wasn't elegant. My mother was a nurse at the nearby hospital, while my father taught maths in high school. Despite their lack of wealth, they made sure we had all we needed. I was quite close to Gemma when I was growing up. In our backyard, we would climb the old oak tree and create intricate games for hours on end. I was happy to go along with her since she always took the lead and made up the rules and narratives. But as we got older, things started to change. Gemma always went above and above. She seemed to flourish in whatever she undertook, and she was the debate team leader at the top of her class. I, on the other hand, was more relaxed. I never had Gemma's level of motivation, but I did well in school. As we got closer to puberty, our relationship started to suffer because of this discrepancy. We had become estranged by the time Gemma departed for college. I stayed local and went to a small college, while she received a scholarship to a prestigious institution. I attended a variety of classes in an attempt to determine my life's purpose, since I was unsure about it. After graduating from college, Gemma moved to the city and started working at a big marketing firm. On weekends and holidays, she would come home with tales of her amazing career and intriguing life. I was overcome with feelings of inferiority. By comparison, I was still living at home, working part-time at the neighborhood supermarket, and attempting to choose what I should do next. I always thought Gemma and I were doing well, even if we didn't agree. I thought that was a natural part of growing up, but we weren't as close as we had been. I didn't realize how easily things may go wrong. 3 years ago, Gemma and her 31-year-old partner Tom were engaged. After 2 years of dating, everyone was overjoyed. My parents admired Tom, a lawyer from a rich family. A gorgeous diamond ring that has been in his family for many generations was used when he proposed. Gemma was ecstatic and was flaunting it to everyone. The celebration of the engagement was a big event. To celebrate, my parents invited what felt like the whole town to our home. Among the wealthy individuals Gemma and Tom had invited from the city, I remember feeling a little uncomfortable. I felt more comfortable with my old high school friends who were still in town than I did with Gemma's fancy group. Everything went haywire a month after the engagement. I had the afternoon of Tuesday off from work. I was enjoying the calm house while playing video games in my room. Gemma took a week-long vacation from work to start working with our mother on the wedding arrangements. I heard Gemma come home after going shopping with her mother. Downstairs, they were laughing and chatting. I ignored it and went back to playing my game. An hour or so later, I heard Gemma yell. She accused me of stealing her engagement ring as I hurried downstairs to see what was going on. She clarified that she left it on the kitchen counter after removing it while cleaning the dishes. She went back to get it, but it was gone. In shock, I immediately denied taking it, but Gemma would not listen. She said that it had to be me because I was the only other person in the house. She said that I was constantly envious of her success and that I most likely wanted to sell the ring in order to move out and start a career. In the middle of the confusion, our parents came home, and to my dismay, Gemma gave me her account of what had happened. They had complete faith in her. My mother started crying, wondering how I could have hurt my own sister in this way. All my father could do was stare at me with dismay. They turned everything upside down and started searching my room. They found some money I had saved for my work at the supermarket, but they didn't locate the ring. It was only a few hundred, perhaps. Gemma, however, saw right away and said, "I must have sold the ring, and that's where the money came from." No one paid attention when I attempted to explain that I had been saving for months and was thinking of enrolling in some classes at the nearby community college. The days that followed were a nightmare. Gemma and my parents kept pressuring me to come clean and give back the ring. If I didn't come clean, they threatened to call the police. I felt completely alone, and I was scared. In my own family, I was regarded like a criminal and no one took me seriously. After high school, most of my friends had moved away, so I attempted getting in touch with a few of them. The handful that were still in town were hesitant to get involved in family disputes. I never felt more alone. My parents made a choice that would change my life forever after a week of constant accusations and threats. "I have to leave," they said. They said that I was embarrassing the family and that they could no longer trust me. I had 2 days to gather my things and get off. I was heartbroken. I didn't know what to do and had nowhere to go. Ryan, a 26-year-old high school best friend who had just returned to town from the army, offered to let me sleep on his sofa for a while. However, I knew I couldn't remain there for very long. He was still getting back on his feet, and his flat was modest. Clothing, books, my laptop, and a few recollections of better days were all crammed into a backpack and an old duffel bag. Gemma was watching me from the window of her former bedroom as I was leaving. She turned away as soon as I thought I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. It was the hardest thing I had ever done to leave the only house I had ever known. Those who were meant to really adore me left me feeling duped and abandoned. The fact that I had done nothing wrong was the saddest part. For the following 2 months, I took turns staying at inexpensive motels that I could afford and Ryan's sofa. To make ends meet, I took on any odd jobs I could find. I've worked as a dog walker, a dishwasher, and even a construction worker for a few weeks. Even though it was difficult, I was committed to proving my innocence and achieving success on my own. I eventually found a reliable work in a warehouse outside of town. The work was challenging. The salary was steady despite the lengthy hours. Although the pay wasn't great, it was enough to let me rent a small room in a home where I lived with a few other warehouse workers. I started to restore my life bit by bit. However, the sorrow of what had transpired remained. The incidents would recur in my mind as I lay awake at night, wondering how they had gone so wrong. How could my family have rapidly turned against me? Gemma knew me better than anybody, having grown up with me, so how could she think I would do that? I stopped speaking to my family. In the beginning, they made many attempts to get in touch with me. In her sincere voicemails, My mother would beg me to return home and put things right. My father texted me a couple times to let me know that we needed to talk. On one occasion, Gemma did up at the warehouse, but I refused to see her. After what they had done, I couldn't bring myself to talk to them again. I no longer considered them family. I lived like Way for 3 years. In my shared house and at work, I met new pals. We would watch sports, drink beer, and hang out after chefs. Although it wasn't the life I had imagined for myself, I had made it my own and it was mine. After putting in a lot of effort, I was given a promotion to warehouse shift supervisor. I started taking business management courses online. I was gradually coming to terms with my life's purpose. However, a part of me was constantly hurt and angry about what had happened. I couldn't forgive them for not believing me, but I did miss my old life and family. Every holiday season was difficult. I was saddened by what I had missed whenever I heard Christmas music or saw families out shopping together. Then, last week, my father sent me an unexpected email. "We need to chat," was all that was said in the subject line. The message was quick and said it was about the ring incident and that they needed to meet with me right away. Like all their other attempts to contact me, I was initially tempted to ignore it. But I hesitated for a reason. Perhaps I was curious, or perhaps I still harbored a tiny need for a resolution. I chose to listen to them after hours of deliberation. I was shocked by my father's words when I called him. They had located the ring. While cleaning the dishes, Gemma had unintentionally knocked it into the garbage disposal. Only a few days ago, when the disposal started making strange noises and they called a plumber to check it out, did she realize this. According to my father, I had been speaking the truth all along, and Gemma became unhappy when she realized what had happened. They all wanted to put things right because they felt awful about what they had done to me, he said. I ended the call, feeling a whirlpool of feelings. I felt vindicated. On the one hand, everyone now knew that I had always been honest, but I was upset. I was angry that I had to fight alone for so long when I had done nothing wrong, that it had taken 3 years to learn the truth, and that I had lost so much time with my family. I'm at a crossroads right now. My folks want me to go back home. They assert that they wish to put things right. I'm not sure I can forgive them, but Gemma has been ringing and emailing constantly, pleading for forgiveness. They didn't hesitate to shove me out, decided to assume the worst of me and abandon me for 3 years. I have a part of me that wants to damn them all and let them suffer the consequences of what they did to me. A part of me, however, longs for my former existence and questions whether it is possible to restore what has been lost. I'm at a loss on what to do. Should I give them a chance to change their ways? Or should I carry on without them, enjoying the life I've built for myself? I could need some outside perspective on this whole thing because I'm conflicted. First update. A lot has happened in the week since my last article. I would want to express my gratitude to everyone for their support and guidance. It really assisted me in processing my feelings and determining my course of action. I debated for a while before deciding to meet with my family. Even if I wasn't persuaded about reconciliation, I felt it was my duty to face them and find closure. We agreed that a small coffee shop in the nearby town would be a neutral location for our meeting. I picked it since we wouldn't see anyone we know because it was far enough from our hometown. However, it was near enough for anybody to reach with little difficulty. The day of the meeting, I was really anxious. I wasn't sure what to anticipate because I hadn't seen my family in 3 years. I picked a table in the corner where we could have some privacy after arriving early to the coffee shop. It felt like a kick to the gut as they entered. It was intense to see them after 3 years. When my mother saw me, she started crying. She had more gray hair, wrinkles around her eyes, and looked older than I recalled. My father looked worn out and exhausted, his shoulders slumping as though he were carrying a heavy load. At first, Gemma was unable to look me in the eye. Compared to the sibling, she seemed smaller and less self-assured. I remembered. After we sat down, nobody knew what to say for a while. All of them began speaking at once, and they all apologized. My parents said that by not believing in me and evicting me, they had failed as parents. Every day since, they acknowledged they had regretted their choice, but they hadn't reached out sooner out of pride and embarrassment. My father, who had never been a talkative guy, spent hours explaining how he had mentally relived those days in an attempt to understand how he could have been so blind. He asserted that although he had always taken pleasure in being just and reasonable, That feeling had influenced his decisions at crucial moments. With tears in her eyes, my mother explained to me how she had kept my room just as I had left it in the hopes that I would return. In the middle of the night, she claimed, she would wake up, believing she had heard me coming home, only to discover what had happened. In tears, Gemma said she would never be able to forgive herself for accusing me and destroying our relationship. She said that although I was younger than she was, she had always admired me when we were kids. She acknowledged that she had been so focused on her personal issues in life that she had forgotten what really mattered. Recollections of our early years flooded back as they spoke. I recalled how, in middle school, Gemma stood up for me when I was being bullied. I thought back to all the times we had shared secrets, laughed together, and helped one another through tough times. It brought back memories of our wonderful moments together, but it also made the betrayal much more painful. Even after I heard all they had to say, I still wasn't ready to forgive them. It was still too raw, the pain and bitterness of the last 3 years. I didn't press for more, telling them that I needed time to understand what they seemed to understand. Before we left, my mom tried to give me a hug, but I resisted. I wasn't yet ready for that level of intimacy. Her distressed expression nearly persuaded me to reconsider my choice, but I stood my ground. I had to emotionally defend myself. I went back to my flat after the meeting and gave my desire some serious thought. Was it my desire to return to my former life? Will I ever be able to trust them again? Was trying to mend our relationship worth it? Even though I missed having a family, I realized that during the last 3 years, I had grown a lot. I was now strong, independent, and had built my own life from the ground up. I had changed since they had expelled me 3 years prior. I thought of the friends I had met, my online schooling, and my employment at the warehouse. I was proud of what I had achieved on my own, and I had worked hard to get to where I was. It seemed terrible to consider giving up it and going back to my previous existence. I couldn't deny, though, that seeing my family had brought up a range of emotions. I still loved and missed them in spite of everything. I questioned whether I could be independent and still be in a relationship with them. I thought about it for a few days before making a choice. I gave my folks a call and told them that, although I was grateful for their apologies, I wasn't ready to make amends just yet. I told them I needed more space and time to recover. I also set certain limits. I said I wasn't returning home or acting like nothing had happened, but I was willing to keep in touch with them as little as possible. If we wanted to stay in touch, I informed them it had to be on my terms. They claimed they understood, but they were disappointed. They pledged to respect my personal space and give me the time I required. I thought it would be a good way to progressively rebuild trust, so I agreed when my mother asked if she may call me once a week to check in. I've made the decision to stay away from Gemma for the time being. I wasn't yet ready to forgive her since her actions had had the most impact on me. I informed her that before I could think about dating her again, I needed more time. Despite her anger, she said she understood and would hold off until I was ready. This week has been difficult, filled with both highs and lows in terms of emotions. There have been times when I've wondered if I'm being too severe or if I'm missing out on a chance to be with my family again. But then I remember how easily they betrayed me, and I see that taking things gently is the appropriate thing to do. I've also begun looking into potential therapeutic uses. A lot of you mentioned it in the comments, and I think it would help to have an expert to talk to as I work through this challenging circumstance. I'm a little anxious because I've never gone to therapy before, but I believe it might help me. My work and education are currently my top priorities. I'm resolved not to let this family drama derail me from my objectives because I have a big project at work coming up. Additionally, I'm considering relocating to a better flat. I believe I'm ready for a place of my own without roommates after saving up. Once again, I appreciate your help. Even though we've never met, it's reassuring to know that there are people out there who care and understand. If there are any significant changes, I'll give you an update. Update 2. I'd like to share some developments since my last update, which was nearly a month ago. I have been adhering to the limits I have set with my family. There haven't been any particularly intense phone calls or texts between us. It's been all right. Not as painful as I had anticipated, but awkward at times. For the most part, my parents have complied with my requests. They occasionally check in, but they never ask for more than I'm willing to give. Although it is a gradual process, I can tell they are making a lot of effort to regain trust. As agreed upon, my mother calls once a week. At first, these calls were difficult and involved long silences, but they are getting easier. We typically talk about unrelated topics like my online education, the weather, and her job at the hospital. Although it's not much, it's a start. I've been getting brief emails from my father, usually just to say hello or to share something he thinks I'd find interesting. He sent me an article last week about a new company opening in our hometown. It was a small gesture, but it brought back memories of the times when I was younger and he would clip newspaper stories for me. Gemma found it difficult to overcome the wall I had put up between us. She apologized and begged for the chance to put things right in numerous, lengthy, heartfelt texts. "I need more time," was my straightforward response. "It's difficult, but I'm holding firm on this. I know she's hurting, but I'm not prepared to deal with her feelings on top of mine." The big news is that I have started treatment. I discovered a counselor that specializes in family trauma, and we've had a few sessions thus far. It has been difficult to bring up all of the grief from the past, but I believe it is helping. My therapist is assisting me in resolving my anger and trust issues, as well as providing me with strategies for setting good boundaries. In our last session, we discussed how the incident with the ring was more than just the accusation, but also years of feeling like I didn't measure up to Gemma's accomplishments. It's made me recognize that there were difficulties in our family dynamic long before the ring incident, and that healing will require addressing those as well. One unanticipated result of all of this is that I've become closer to my pals, particularly Ryan. They've been extremely supportive throughout the entire ordeal. Ryan even offered to accompany me to any future family meetings for moral support. It's taught me that family is more than just blood. It's about who supports you when things go rough. Work has been a welcome distraction. I've poured myself into my career and even received a modest promotion. I'm now in charge of inventory management for my shift, which means additional responsibility and a minor pay increase. It is nice to have something pleasant to focus on in terms of my living situation. I've decided to stay where I am for the time being. It's not much, but it's mine and symbolizes the independence I've worked so hard for. My parents offered to help me find a better place, but I declined. I have to do this on my own. However, I began to carefully consider choices for furthering my studies. A state institution located approximately an hour distance provides night classes. I am considering applying to their business program. It would be a significant move, but I believe I am prepared for it. Overall, I'm taking it one day at a time. Certain days are harder than others. There are times when I mourn our easy connection as a family, but then I recall how fast they turned on me, and I realize I can't rush this process. My therapist thinks it's good to have mixed feelings about everything. She encourages me to be patient with myself and not feel obligated to forgive before I'm ready. We're working on techniques for dealing with upcoming family gatherings and holidays, which are making me more apprehensive than I'd like to admit. For the time being, my priorities are recovering and creating a life I can be proud of, with or without my family. It's not easy, but I'm positive about the future. I'm learning that it's all right to put myself first, and that creating boundaries does not make me a horrible person. Thank you for your continuing support. Your comments and messages have provided me with strength during this process. It's comforting to know I'm not alone in coping with familial issues like these. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my original post, so I thought it was time for a last update. A lot has changed during the last few months. The biggest news is that I've decided to relocate to a different place in search of a new employment opportunity. It's a significant advancement in my profession, and I'm looking forward to the new opportunities. The job is with a logistics company, and the work is comparable to what I did at the warehouse, but on a much larger size. It's a management role, which I've been working toward for a while. The income is much higher than what I was making previously, and it includes benefits such as health insurance and a 401k plan. Before making this decision, I had a lengthy conversation with my therapist. We talked about how this move will influence my healing process and my relationship with my family. Finally, we agreed that this could be a good thing for me. an opportunity to fully stand on my own 2 feet and identify myself outside of the family drama. I informed my parents about the transfer last week. They were astonished and disappointed, yet they expressed their understanding. My mother cried a little, stating she had hoped we'd have more time to restore our relationship before my departure. My father was more stoic, but I could see he was disappointed too. They were both concerned about me being alone in a strange place, but I told them that I'd be okay. Gemma took it the hardest after I told her. She showed up unannounced to my flat, pleading with me not to go. She admitted that she felt like she was losing me all over again. It was a challenging conversation, but I held my ground. I informed her that this was something I needed to do for myself, and that our relationship was not in a position where her opinion could influence my decision. Our relationship is improving, but it is not perfect. We've enjoyed several family dinners in recent months. They've been uncomfortable and awkward at times, but we're gradually learning to be around each other again. Trust is still a major issue. I sometimes question their motives, wondering if they truly believe what they say, or if they are simply attempting to relieve their guilt. My therapist has been crucial throughout this. She has helped me analyze my emotions and create boundaries. She has emphasized that forgiveness does not imply forgetting or pretending that the trauma never happened. It's about letting go of my anger in order to find peace of mind. I've taken that to heart. While I don't believe I'll ever forget what happened, I'm attempting to forgive my family. Not for their sake, but for mine. It was hard to carry around all of my anger and hatred, and I'm ready to let it go. As I prepare for this relocation, I've been thinking about all that has occurred 3 years ago. I believed my life was ended. I'd lost everything, including everyone I cared about. But now I see how much I've learned from that experience. I'm stronger, more independent, and have a greater grasp of my own value than I ever had. I don't know what the future holds for me and my family. We aim to keep in touch once I migrate. With weekly phone conversations and visits throughout the holidays, it's a start. Perhaps with time and distance, we will be able to develop something fresh for the time being. My concentration is focused on the future. I'm enthusiastic about my new work, the new city and the prospects that await me. I've begun looking for flats online and investigated the location where I'll be dwelling. Although I'm apprehensive and excited at the same time, I'm mostly looking forward to this new phase of my life. I have faith that I will be all right no matter what happens to my family. I've shown to myself that I can handle whatever challenge life presents, and I've come to appreciate the importance of surrounding oneself with positive, encouraging individuals. Whether they are connected, I appreciate you watching. Please click the notification bell if you haven't already in order to receive updates on additional startling real-life stories that are happening in your area. Story 3. I transferred my assets because I thought my wife was preparing for a divorce. She filed 2 weeks later, but when her plan didn't work out, she went back. Hi there, everyone. I need your assistance before we begin the video for today. One of the finest things you can do to help us with the channel's declining popularity is to subscribe. It's easy, cost-free, and enables us to keep providing you with amazing content. Your assistance is crucial. Together, let's continue to build this channel. Many thanks. Let's start the video now. Hi everyone! I've spent some time reading the postings on this site. I thought I would never have a story of my own, but I've been carrying this around for months, and life has a way of startling you. I must release it. I want to be clear. I've never been the kind to assume the worst or draw hasty assumptions. My spouse. I've been with her for 6 years, and we've been married for 4. Let's name her M. It was substantial, or so I believed. We had the usual ups and downs, but nothing that gave me the impression that something was wrong. In fact, we were that couple of totally devoted coworkers for the most of our partnership. We had a rhythm that simply worked, spent hours debating which movie to watch, and laughed at dumb inside jokes. I would treat her to her favorite takeaway as she planned lavish date nights. Following a hard day, it seemed natural, as though we had mastered the art of love. That's why the following thing that happened hit me like a ton of bricks. Things started to change around 6 months ago. It was small details at first. Things that, if you weren't paying attention, you would probably miss. Even when she was only walking to the kitchen or folding clothes, she started to always have her phone with her. Prior to this, she didn't care who picked up her phone, which would sit on the coffee table for hours. I made this joke one day. Are you currently operating a clandestine spy ring? She laughed and said, No, I've been getting a lot of emails from work. All okay, all right. However, she came up with a password a few days later. She had never used it before, so that one took me by surprise. She gave me an evasive response about security and hackers when I casually asked why. It just felt strange, and it didn't stop there. I didn't push it since I didn't want to come across as suspicious. For the first time, she started answering calls outside the room. And it wasn't subtle. She would remark, "Oh, let me just grab this real quick," as her phone rang, and then she would go into the bedroom or out on the porch. She would just say if I asked who it was, just a coworker friend. Then I saw that she had developed a new habit of leaving her phone on the table, face down. It wasn't until I leaned over to hand her something, and she quickly pushed her phone aside, that I realized it was a thing. It was one of those times when you blink and you miss it. But when the distance grew, it remained with me. But the phone wasn't the only thing involved. She became aloof. It seemed like pulling teeth to have conversations that used to flow naturally. What if I mentioned future plans, like where we ought to go on our anniversary? Or should we begin saving for a new vehicle, in your opinion? She would just reply, "Yeah, we'll see," and not. Prior to changing the topic, for me, it all came together on a Wednesday at random. She told me she was going out to coffee with a friend after work. The sound wasn't odd. Sometimes she does that. I decided to surprise her as I was in the same neighborhood performing errands. It will be adorable. But she wasn't with her pal when I got there. She was going back and forth outside the eatery. She pressed her phone to her ear. Something about her voice seemed serious, so I stayed in my car. I heard things like "it's almost ready" and "starting fresh soon," but I didn't mean to listen in. I felt sick to my stomach. It didn't seem like a disagreement between friends or a job, but I couldn't understand what she was saying. It sounded more elaborate, as if she had planned it before she got home. I inquired about her coffee date. She gave me a whole story about her buddy griping about her guy while trying to keep the conversation light-hearted. I just stared at her for a moment because it was such an unexpected statement. "What are you saying?" I asked. She gave a shrug. "I simply believe that everything ought to be in one location. For example, all of our account information, passwords, documents, and so forth, just in case something goes wrong." I was at a loss for words. We had never talked about this before, and considering everything else I had observed, the timing seemed odd. "Which emergencies?" I asked, trying not to seem too formal. She gave another shrug. "Isn't that just smart? But what if one of us gets hurt? Or what if we had to make a significant financial choice right away?" On the surface, her argument made reasonable, but I felt uneasy about the manner she presented it. It sounded too slick and practiced, as though she had been holding off on bringing it up until the right moment. "Yeah, I guess that's a good idea," I said as I nodded. "But there were deafening sirens inside. Why now? We've always kept our funds free and apart, so why are we now worried about organizing them?" I kept replaying her comments in my head that night, trying to understand what she was saying. Was this normal adult conduct? Was I exaggerating it too much? Then I recalled the phone conversations. How aloof she had been lately, and the conversation I heard at the cafe. Everything started to pile up, and I didn't like the picture it was giving me. I hadn't done anything about it until then. A few days later, she brought it up once more. The kitchen was where we were. She made the comment as she was browsing through her phone while I was preparing a lunch. "Have you given organizing the bank's belongings additional thought? For example, do you know the location of all the account information?" I looked at her after lowering the knife. "Well, what's happening?" I asked, trying to sound forceful but not too casual. "The topic of money has been on your mind a lot recently. Is there anything we should discuss?" At last, she raised her head from her phone, surprised that I had asked her to do so. "No, there's nothing wrong," I laughed at her hurried response. "All you know is that I believe it's crucial for emergencies." "Emergencies? Such as?" Her look was inscrutable as she shrugged. "I'm not sure. Simple life matters. I swear it's not a huge problem. I simply believe that we ought to take care of it." She gave a vague response. Too ambiguous. I nodded and ignored it, but I became even more dubious of her since she didn't give me a direct response. It no longer seemed like a casual proposal. She seemed to be hiding something, but I couldn't tell what it was. I so made the decision to investigate our finances the next day when she was at work. During the last month, I made an unexpected discovery when I opened our joint account online. A few little movements have occurred. Small amounts that didn't seem to have a defined function were all that was present. They weren't meant for groceries, bills, or anything like that. I didn't want to make any assumptions, but it seemed like she had been taking money out of the account for an unknown purpose. I thought about speaking to her, but I decided to wait. I would appear foolish if I was mistaken, and I would need to exercise caution if I was right. I called someone I trusted because it was getting to me, a former college buddy who was a lawyer as well. I tried not to sound like a conspiracy theorist when I told him what I had found. After I had recounted everything, he said, "Look, you're not crazy for wanting to be prepared if you're worried about safeguarding your possessions. But I'm not claiming that something is happening right now. This is the time to do it. It's better to be safe than sorry." He showed me the basic steps I could take to make sure my money was safe in case something went wrong. Admittedly, it seemed unusual to take such dramatic measures. I had no idea what was wrong, but it seemed like I was getting ready for something terrible. However, it made more sense the more I thought about it. I had to protect myself if she was indeed up to something, as I was starting to think. Making the choice was not simple, but this was about more than money or property. It had to do with the life we'd built together. I kept seeing the same pictures in my mind. The strange little jokes we told each other, the late-night discussions about our dreams, and our wedding day. How did we get here? Has our marriage devolved into this? The idea of doing these things seemed like giving up, as though I were formally betraying the confidence we had once had. I pulled out my laptop and sat at my desk that night while she was gone. I opened the computer with trembling hands and started looking over everything: the property deed, bank accounts, and investment accounts. A nagging voice in my head kept reminding me that this was about survival, not sabotage. Even if every page I read seemed like a betrayal, I had no intention of hurting her. I kept thinking that I would regret not acting sooner rather than later. I made a list of all the things I could transfer and how to accomplish it covertly. A crushing weight settled against my chest as I typed. For years, I had completely trusted her, and suddenly I was playing defense against the person I believed would always be there for me. I then gave my mother a call and gave her a brief explanation of why I needed her assistance. "For a time, I need you to keep on to certain items for me. Nothing is wrong. It's just a precaution I must take in case something goes wrong." For a minute, she was quiet, probably attempting to understand what I didn't say. "Are you all right?" There was anxiety in her voice. "Yes, I did lie. It's only a safety measure. There is nothing to be concerned about." I could hear the pause in her voice when she answered, but she didn't press me. "Of course, whatever you need, my love." With a strange mixture of relief and embarrassment, I hung up. Although I hated to involve her in this mess, knowing that she had my back brought some stability to an otherwise tumultuous situation. I had started the process by the time Emma got home. I transferred the property, our monetary investments, and most of my possessions to my mother's name. The rest was locked down, but I kept enough in our joint account to maintain appearances. Nothing caught her attention. She asked if I wanted to watch a movie after entering and giving me a cheek kiss. I seemed well, but inside I was a shambles. Part of me felt dreadful, as if I had broken her confidence, but another part of me felt relieved, as if I was finally getting control of a situation that had escalated out of my grasp. Over the following 3 days, I attempted to keep a normal schedule. I didn't want to let her know that anything had changed. She seemed content, even strangely joyful at times. However, rather than putting me at rest, it aroused my concern whether she was plotting anything. She did a good job of disguising it. What stuck out, however, was that she never brought up the finances again, not even after I questioned her the last time. It was as if the subject had gone from her recollection. At first, I assumed I had overreacted, and she rejected the matter since it wasn't important. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized she was avoiding it, almost as if she was frightened to bring it up again after I pressed her. I saw her look at me many times, as though she was gauging my attitude or deciding whether or not to speak. She always swiftly returned her focus to whatever she was doing, whether it was a book, the TV, or her phone when I noticed. It was there, but it was minor. She seemed to be waiting for me to mention it, as though she didn't want to bring up the subject once more. I was just more nervous because of the stillness. She didn't usually drop things. It was necessary to her, and her avoidance of it now seemed purposeful. She wasn't going in if she was just trying things out. I wasn't going to give her the all clear if she was waiting for anything. I knew I had to be ahead of her every step of the way. I had no idea how or when it would happen, but something was coming. I could just get ready. I made sure everything was firm that night. I took another look at the documents, making sure that everything about my mother's asset transfers, the house, the savings, the investments was correct. Legally, everything was now in her name, sealed in a trust that cannot be challenged. I even gave her a call to make sure she had all the required documentation. After 2 weeks, everything seemed to be back to normal. To be honest, she was behaving more affectionately and even began to discuss irrelevant subjects like work or what we should eat for dinner. She had been distant for months, avoiding more than surface-level talks, so it caught me off guard. I started to wonder whether I had been overreacting all along. Perhaps the odd behavior was just stress or something I didn't understand. However, she sat me down on the couch one random Friday night, turned off the TV, and said, "We need to talk." I felt my stomach drop. I anticipated her words before she did. With such composure, she answered, "I think we should get a divorce." It appeared ready. It wasn't angry or sentimental. It was just cold, like though she had informed me that we were out of milk. Unsure of how to react, I just gazed at her. As she outlined her case, she talked of feeling as like she had lost her identity in the marriage, desiring space, and wanting to learn more about herself. Typical breakup statements that provided no meaningful explanation. However, her tone changed when she said something else. "I don't believe you truly realize all of the sacrifices I've made for you over the years, you know. I'm worthy of better." The final bit hurt. She wanted leaving for more reasons than that. She presented it as though I owed her anything, that I was to blame for everything, and she was only asserting her right to what was rightfully hers. Another question came up as I sat there attempting to comprehend what she was saying. Why now? Everything began to make sense when she said anything. "I've been getting a better perspective from a pal." She went on without giving me a kind glance. I stayed still, allowing her to talk, but my thoughts were racing. This friend was who? They were quite interested in my marriage, but why? It wasn't casual the way she said it. She seemed to have been hyped up by someone who made her believe that leaving me was a plan she needed to follow rather than just a decision. Additionally, my skepticism grew as she continued to argue that her sacrifices earned her more. Offerings? What sacrifice? She was pleased with me, or so she claimed. I put a lot of effort into giving her the life she wanted, and money wasn't the only factor. I granted her request to relocate near her place of employment. When she wanted to go to that expensive yoga retreat last year, I made sure we budgeted for it, even skipping a vacation I was looking forward to so she could go, even though it meant a longer commute for me. When she made 2 professional changes, I supported her and told her that it was okay to take the chance because I wanted her to be happy. I felt that a good spouse should prioritize her whenever feasible. Furthermore, I wasn't a distant, inattentive companion. I arrived. I recalled random events and birthdays. She had spoken about love. She said that she felt stuck in a rut. I recommended going on dates. I heard her gripe about her family, friends, and career. I tried, but I didn't always get it right. Her "I deserve more" comment stung so deeply because of this. I didn't even think about purchasing it. There was nothing I did or did not do that offended her. Something had changed in her, and this troubled her. Maybe it had something to do with the acquaintance she kept bringing up. However, the woman seated in front of me was not the woman I married, and I refused to allow her to change the story of our marriage to suit her own version of events. Right now, I didn't press her. Instead, I mumbled something harmless, like "if that's how you feel," and nodded. I suppose we should decide what to do next. I didn't mind, but she seemed surprised that I wasn't arguing or pleading with her to stay. Already, my focus had shifted. I had to find out what or who was responsible for her abrupt planned change in behavior. She didn't suddenly decide she wanted to go. I wasn't going to allow this to surprise me any more than it had previously, since it was something bigger. She moved into her own flat after our conversation, and on Monday I got the divorce papers. They intended to steal everything, including the house, my funds, my possessions, and the automobile. In addition to ending the relationship, let me tell you, she desired everything. In addition, there were certain unclear spousal support provisions that didn't make sense considering her high income. She seemed to be expecting me to give her everything I had worked so hard to earn. I thought she was being vindictive at first, but the way she stated her demands so forceful and precise reassured me that she had someone helping her. So I dug. I had to be cunning because I couldn't simply ask her who she'd been speaking to. I started with her social media accounts. Although she didn't post often, I looked through her tagged photos and comments in hopes of finding someone new, and she hadn't blocked me. At that point, I noticed a pattern. Jake liked and commented on her posts on a regular basis. Not pornographic, but enough to get me thinking. I clicked on his publicly accessible profile. He didn't seem like much more than a 30-year-old marketing expert at first glance. But I noticed something odd as I scrolled down. He shared a picture from the same cafe where I had seen her weeks earlier. I heard her talking about starting over that same day. As I scrolled on, my stomach rumbled. More subtle signals were a comment on one of her pictures that read, "Along with this, you have a selfie he took from what looked to be her new home." It was enough to make me suspicious, but none of it was solid proof. I knew I couldn't just sit there and wait for answers, but I wasn't sure how to proceed with this knowledge. Her mention of a friend who supported her through difficult times stuck with me, and I was curious about who it was. I made the decision to get in touch with Lisa, a mutual acquaintance. She was aware of what was happening because she and my wife had been friends for years. I started off by asking her if she had recently spoken to my wife or if anything seemed off. Lisa responded quickly, stating that she was unaware of the friend or any recommendations. She defensively ended the conversation when I asked her a few more pointed questions, saying she was unable to assist me. Everything seemed hurried, as though she was attempting to avoid getting engaged. Unwilling to give up, I gave another friend, Emily, a call. Using the same pattern, I claimed that I was just attempting to make sense of the situation. At first, she was nervous and gave me evasive answers to my questions. I became even more dubious after she abruptly ended the call when I pressed her further. Frustrated, I sat there trying to think of what to do. I was shocked when Emily called me back. She informed me that she needed to make sure she didn't remember what she had said. After I reassured her that it wouldn't, she finally shared what she knew. It turns out that my wife had been hanging out with a guy named Jake, whom she had met at work. Emily claims she didn't know much else, but from what she'd heard, Jake was very active in the divorce advice my wife was receiving. Hearing that name felt like a puzzle piece fitting into place. It was evident that this was more than just her need for space, or to find herself. Someone else was in the picture directing her decisions, and I was eager to discover why I choose to confront it in my own manner. That Saturday, I headed to her apartment building and parked a block away, trying to confirm what I already suspected. A few hours later, she and Jake stepped out of the building. They did not hold hands or anything, but the way they walked together close, leaning in to talk, was plenty. They got into his car and drove away, leaving me sitting there staring at the spot where they had been. I did not follow them. I did not need to. At that point, it was evident she hadn't simply stopped loving me. She'd been preparing to go with someone else, and now everything made sense. The unexpected distancing, the money questions, the forceful demands, and the divorce papers. She wasn't simply abandoning me, she was leaving me with nothing. And she was accompanied by someone at all times. I went home that night, my head racing with everything I had learned. The betrayal burned. But what hurt the most was how premeditated everything was. She was using the divorce as a stepping stone to whatever life she was creating with Jake, but she had no idea what I had planned for her. The first mediation session felt strained from the time we stepped in. Her lawyer arrived with a binder so thick that it looked. They were pursuing a lawsuit against a Fortune 500 corporation. He began detailing her requests as if they were totally fair. Half the house, the money, my assets, the vehicle, and even some crap about spousal maintenance. I sat silent, pretending to listen, but I was waiting for my attorney to make his move. When it was finally our turn, he tossed a stack of documents across the table and said, "Before we start, I think it's vital for everyone to peruse these." Her lawyer got the documents and looked through them. His confident posture shifted swiftly as he flipped through the pages, his brow furrowing deeper with each one. "What is this?" he queried, staring at my lawyer. "These documents indicate the transfer of all main assets into a trust under my client's mother's name," my lawyer said quietly. "The transactions were done many weeks before the divorce filing, and the trust is totally legal and irreversible." The room went totally quiet. Her lawyer glanced at her, bewildered and furious. "You didn't mention this," he spoke bluntly. Her face flushed as she grabbed the papers out of his hands and turned through them. She looked at the notarized dates and signatures and exclaimed, "This can't be real." Then she turned to face me, her expression shifting from disbelief to anger. "You have this planned?" she whispered, staring at me as though I had done something horrible. "You put this up to defraud me when you knew I was going to file?" I didn't answer. I simply sat there and allowed her to make the connections on her own. Her attorney, who seemed upset, asked my lawyer to clarify. So he did, slowly, methodically, and with all the proof required to establish the transfer's veracity. I had moved everything long before she filed, as evidenced by the dates matching exactly. The confidence was strong, and the signatures were properly notarized. They couldn't do anything to dispute it. She was enraged. She leaned forward in her chair and exclaimed, "You're unbelievable. It's unbelievable that you would do such a thing to me." I still remained silent. What might be said? I wasn't trying to harm her in any way. She had made it clear that she was not leaving quietly, therefore I was defending myself by doing this. Her lawyer said something about needing to reconsider their approach as the meeting came to an end, but everyone in the room understood they had nothing else to do. She pulled me aside in the corridor as we were leaving the building. She was looking angry and desperate at the same time. "This isn't over," she said softly. "This is something you will regret." "I already regret trusting you," I murmured, glancing at her. "The only thing I regret is that." After the mediation session, things escalated more quickly than I had expected. Almost immediately, she went into full-blown tantrum mode. The incessant calls were the first sign. She left voicemails and first seemed composed, even apologetic. "We can solve things, but I think we just need to communicate." I realized this got messy. When I didn't respond, the tone shifted. By day 2, she was alternating between crying and yelling in her texts. She would complain in one message about making a mistake and not wanting to lose everything we had worked so hard to accomplish. She would then go on a frenzied diatribe, accusing me of being nasty and stingy and holding me responsible for all of her problems. I chose to disregard it all. I genuinely didn't want to interact, but my lawyer advised me not to. She wasn't done with her games, but I was. She started narrating stories when the calls and messages failed. According to mutual acquaintances, she had been claiming that the divorce was a fraud and that it was all a part of a bigger joke. Who would believe that, really? It became clear that her story was flawed. Friends started to inquire, "Why did you file actual legal paperwork if it was a prank? Or if it wasn't serious, why would you engage a lawyer and make such detailed demands?" She stepped forward when others didn't immediately embrace the prank explanation. She claimed that it was a test of the strength of our connection rather than a joke. She started playing the victim, saying that I had gone too far and deceived her, that my response had been hurtful, and that I had shattered the trust in our marriage. Some people first appeared to trust her allegations. My acquaintances would send me odd emails or comments along the lines of, "Wow, I didn't realize. Things were so rough for her. You should have just talked it out instead of being so drastic," even her brother said. I knew the truth would ultimately surface, even though it was frustrating. And it did. Because of a mutual friend, let's name him Matt. Matt and I had always been friendly, but we were not very close. He sent me an unexpected message a few weeks after the mediation, saying he had something I needed to see. He pulled out his phone when we first met and showed me a string of texts she had sent to Jake. At first, I was perplexed. "Even so, how did you obtain these?" I looked through the texts and asked. Matt disclosed that Jake and him had a common friend who had overheard their conversations. Evidently, this mutual acquaintance had become dissatisfied with the state of affairs, particularly after Jake started boasting about how he was helping her to secure her future. That common friend quickly grasped the true meaning of protecting her future. attempting to drain me. The friend felt bad about not speaking up, so he took screenshots of the texts and forwarded them to Matt, thinking he knew me better and could alert me. He has been on both sides of the argument. Matt shook his head in response. He has been enticing her to take you for everything and giving her the impression that he will support her thereafter. I thought you should know you don't deserve this man, Matt added, passing over the text to me. The texts were awful. She wasn't only complaining about the divorce to Jake. Together, they were actively planning her next moves, and he was helping her navigate them. We'll get everything we need when the settlement is finalized, according to a note she left. All I need is for him to accept the conditions, Jake answered. Don't give up. If necessary, make him feel bad about it. You owe him. When you have the funds, we'll begin anew. I sat there trying to make sense of what I was reading while looking at Matt's phone. This was not an emotional reaction to a broken marriage, nor was it a miscommunication. This manipulation was cold and purposeful. Matt departed after I thanked him, but my mind was racing. Now, everything made clear. Her sudden seclusion, her obsession with our money, and her severe demands throughout the divorce. All of this was planned. The text rapidly spread among our common acquaintances after she had been working behind the scenes with Jake. After Matt shared them with a few people, her tale spread swiftly and abruptly lost credibility. Individuals who had previously shown her little concern or even encouragement started to turn away. And it was almost instantaneous. She was abruptly seen for who she really was by those who had previously supported her or remained indifferent. Even those closest to her began to turn away. She only got her own belongings when the divorce was finalized. After realizing there was no legal foundation for her case, her attorney discreetly dropped it. The papers I had shown had disproved all those audacious requests, and the trust I had built with my mother was irrevocable. As soon as everything started to go apart, Jake appeared to disappear. If he exploited her as much as she used me, I wouldn't be shocked. I could see that he had been fostering her dreams of freedom and fresh starts. But the instant it became clear that she had nothing to take with her, he had left. She lost confidence when Jake wasn't there to support her. They kept making calls and sending SMS, but their desperation grew. She had stopped accusing me, she pleaded. Could we simply have a conversation? Would you please? I'll stop at nothing to make this right. Another voicemail had a different viewpoint. Can't we just get this resolved and go on? You don't have to forgive me. Just talk to me and I'll drop everything. I didn't answer. I was unable to. The damage could not be undone. Her family also started to pull apart. Once, when he trusted her version of events, her brother called me and apologized for some of his previous remarks. What she was doing to you was unknown to me. I'm sorry I ever believed her, he said. For my part, I got my funds, the house, and something I hadn't had in a long time, tranquility. As usual, my mother was my pillar of support. She brought buckets of paint and a list of ideas to help me take back the space. Life seems like mine again now. Stop second-guessing every little exchange. I no longer feel deceived. Just tranquility. She is a part of my past that I no longer read, and I am solely responsible for writing the rest of it. I appreciate you watching. Please click the notification bell if you haven't already in order to receive updates on additional startling real-life stories that are happening in your area.